Hi everyone, welcome to class. So, how was your reading week? Good. You had the midterms, I guess, right? All of term one?
No.
No, not yet? Okay. So, hopefully that's why I still less students in class today. So today we are going to talk about data manipulation language, and we also do some hands-on that we didn't have time to do last week. The week before the reading week. So, just a quick review. We covered the DML data definition language. What was the main commands for data definition language? Like creating tables, right? Dropping tables, altering tables, so anything related to the structure of the table. And then we also learned how to do some integrity controls on the tables, right? For example, adding constraints, adding, for example, check constraint, unique foreign keys, or any other constraint. We also learned how to do referential integrity, right? Referential integrity was when we have a foreign key in a table, right? So we want to see, when we have a foreign key, it means two tables are linked, right? And we want to see what happens, for example, to the other table if we make, for example, a delete update on the parent table. So, for example, we had this example of department and employees, right? And we said, okay, in the employee table, we have a foreign key reference in the department, right? What is that foreign key? If we have two tables for the employee and department, considering each employee can work, for example, in only one department, but each department can have multiple employees working in that. So this is a one-to-many relationship, right? Now, in this case, where does the foreign key go?
Into the employee table.
To the main side, right? Which is the employee table. So in the employee, you know that we have department ID as the foreign key, right? And then we learned, okay, so if this is the table, if this is the employee table with some columns, right? Like employee ID, which is the primary key, and some other columns, and then department ID. This is the foreign key, right? Which is referencing this table, which is the department. Now, department ID is the primary key here. Now I said, okay, for referential integrity, you want to see what is happening, for example, if I'm going to remove a department from the department table, right? So, for example, department name and so on. For example, department ID 1 could be ECS. Department ID 2 could be adult business and something else, right? And then, for sure, we have some employees working in each department, right? For example, employee ID 10 working in department ID 1, employee ID, for example, please, the same department, maybe different department, right? Different department and so on. Now, we wanted to see what if, for example, we remove the business department. Now, most of the time, it depends on your assumption, right? And how you want to define that in your database. For example, maybe you want to say, okay, if I'm removing a department, it doesn't actually make sense if you're removing a department, you keep employees working in that department, right? Because we don't have that department anymore. Unless you have like this assumption, okay, we want to keep the employees, but we don't want to like remove the employees, right? For example, if you remove the business department, I want to assign, for example, maybe later, I want to assign those employees to another department, okay? So it all depends on your assumption. Depending on your assumption, you want to decide if this is going to be deleted, what do you want to do with all the employees working in that department, right? Now, this will reach us to these three, actually four referential integrity controls, restrict or no action, cascade, set null and set default, right? And set default. And then we explain, for example, if we define, for example, anti-bit cascade, it means we want to cascade everything to the other table as well, right? For example, if you want to remove the business department, we want to cascade this deletion also to this table, right? And remove all the employees working in this department because we already removed the department. Or you say, okay, no, I want to keep those employees. Even if I remove the business department, I still want to keep these two, for example, employees, Mona and, I don't know, Alex, right? I want to keep these employees, maybe later assigning them to some other departments. So I want to set null. Okay? So in that case, if you remove this department from the department table, here, the department ID will be null, right? And set default is just a default value, right? For example, you say, okay, if we remove departments, I want the employees, like default department will be some other departments, right? And then that will be your default value. And no action or restrict, this is the default setup, right? If you don't define anything, SQL Server treat this as no action. So if when you are, for example, creating your tables, you just define primary keys, foreign keys with no referential integrity control. That is, we do not define what is going to happen if you are going to delete or update anything here. Then you have no action restrict, right? You can explicitly mention that, or if not, this is the default setup. So these are what we covered so far. Do you have any questions about integrity controls, DDL commands? No? Okay, good. So let's start with DML. Now, we said data manipulation language. When we're talking about it, we're actually talking about all the commands that are going to apply the changes to the data in our tables, right? Not the structure of the table. So, for example, if you want to retrieve some data from your tables, right? You're not going to change the tables. You're going to just check, view, select, right? So, primary DML commands are select, update, insert, and delete, right? And these are all, if you notice, these are all about the structure, the data in the tables. For example, if you insert data into tables, right, you don't change the structure of the table. You are not adding a column, you are not adding a key or anything like that, taking the data part or anything like that. You're just inserting data into the same structure that we had before. Update, the same. So if you want to update a value, for example, in a specific field in your table, you can use update. Again, that is about the data in the table. If you want to change the structure of the table, what was the command? Everyone? Alter. If you want to, for example, add a column to your table. Alter, right? So you are going to use alter. And then delete if you want to just delete, for example, value in your table. So we'll see all the examples today. So these are just some examples before we go into more detail, just for you to see what I'm talking about. So for example, you want to select some employees from your staff or employee table, but you are only interested in those employees, for example, their salary is greater than this amount, right? Then this is how it looks like. So if you want to insert data into your tables, and we're talking about the insert in this format, I may also cover other ways. For example, if you want to, if you have a file or you want to import more data into your tables later. So this we learned when I covered DDL command, right? And I said because I want you to see the full table with the data in the table. So this is how it works. And then update. For update, you have to mention set. Why? Because, for example, you say, okay, update the staff table, right? This is your table, but you also want to mention that what update you want to do. I want to, for example, change the salaries, I want to update the salaries, or for example, multiply them by 2, multiply them by 1.5, or anything, right? And then you may have also more conditions or filtering, right? That is where we're using where clause. So where clause is basically to, for example, add a filter to your query or condition, right? For example, you don't want to like multiply all salaries in your table by this number. You only want to increase the salary of a specific employee, right? So you want to update the staff table, set the salary, for example, to any new number you want, where staff, and this is come to your condition. And this is the delete format. So this is the syntax. Please do not forget from, right? So you delete from table name, where then you will have again your condition. For example, you want to remove this specific employee. So we'll see this more in the SQL together. So this is a general form for data retrieval, like select. We could have select or select distinct. The only difference is that if you select and you don't use distinct, it retrieves all the results for you. But if you select distinct, it only shows one instance of the same things. That I'm going to show you an example. From table, and then you have your, for example, where clause where you add your conditions. Then we have group by. That is when, for example, let's say you want to find average salary for each department, right? Then you want to like group the departments together, right? So that you can say, okay, for example, right? Let's say if I had a salary also here, right? If I'm in the employee table, if I have department ID also salary. So as you see, department ID here is not primary key, right? So it is repeated. This is a foreign. Now, if for each employee, let's say we have a salary. Okay. So if we have salary also here, right? And we want to find average salary for each department, right? That's when we want to group our data, right? So we want to group departments, right? So that the result look like this. For example, for department ID 1, the average salary, for example, let's say this is 100K, this is 100K, and this is 200, right? Or this is, for example, 100, 200, and then this is your average salary, right? And then you write the average salary here, right? So this is when we use group by. Now, the important thing here is that you see the having clause after the group by. So this is very similar to where, in a sense that it also applies some filtering after group by. The only difference is that when you're using where is before aggregation, okay? So if you want to add any condition before aggregation. But if it is after aggregation, for example, if you use group by, and then I say, okay, I want to, for example, find average salary for each department that, for example, have more than a specific number of employees, right? I'm adding a condition after the aggregation, then we are using having. We see more examples so you don't get confused. And then order by, if you want to like see the result in a specific order, like ascending by specific, for example, column for column. So let's see. And these are list of clauses in SQL queries, right? So as I mentioned, we have select distinct from, where you add your conditions here. Order by, if you want to sort the results. Group by, if you want to like group the data, finding, for example, average, count, sum, or anything like that. Having, if you want to have some other, for example, filtering after aggregation. And then we also cover join, union, correlation, and so on. So for today, I probably can finish up to join so that we can also have some practice. Now, as I mentioned before, you already know that if you want to like select some, for example, values from your tables, you can use the select clause, right? Specify the attribute to be returned by the query. So let's say your table has, I don't know, 20 columns, and you don't want to like retrieve all those columns. You are only interested, for example, in employee ID and salary. Okay, you only want to see the salary of employees. In that case, you can specify those columns using the select clause, right? For example, select employee ID, and for example, a salary from the table name, right? So this is about the select clause. And then we have select distinct, which shows only one instance of all different values of the selected attributes. So I'm going to show that also with an example. So for example, if you select distinct department ID from the employee table, right, it only shows you 1 and 2, right, because we only have 2 distinct values of department ID in this table. But if you only select, for example, department ID from the employee table, it shows you 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, right? So this is the difference between select and select distinct. And then from, you just want to specify, okay, the columns that we selected belong to which table or tables, right? Now, we practice with these 2 tables today. I already provided, I think it's a Microsoft Word file where you can find the queries to create and insert data into these 2 tables. So please do that if you already have your laptop and you want to practice today. Just to save time, you can copy and paste those queries, right? Just creating these 2 tables, staff and organization or department, and insert the same data into that. So this is just showing, for example, if you select a star from staff or organization, you can see, using a star, you can see all the columns, not only, for example, a specific columns. Can I change the light here? I don't have anything. Okay. Oh, maybe from here. Lighting control. That don't work. Do you see any change in the lights? No. Okay, anyways. So can you see the screen? Okay. Now, I go over some slides and then we switch to SQLs to save time. Okay, so I'm just passing like this slide so that we cover some parts of our lecture, and then I'm going back to show you different queries here. So these are just screenshots for you if you are using different softwares, right? For example, if you're using SQL Server Management Studio or SSMS as your DMS, or for example, you are using Azure Data Studio, or if you use SQL Server, VS Code is the same, right? Very similar to this. And this is the difference between select versus select distinct, right? For example, if you select job from staff, you see all the jobs, even if they are repeated. Like, for example, manager sale, etc. But if you want to only select distinct job from staff, you want to see, for example, how many distinct values of job you have there, right? Then you select distinct job from staff. Now, you can also specify 2 columns here or more, right? For example, we can use select distinct department number, comma job from staff, right? And in this case, it shows you the distinct, like the combination should be distinct now, right? For example, if you select star from staff, you can see like all these columns. What is the difference if you select distinct department number and job? So the difference I showed here, right? So for example, here, D3, date, and manager is repeated. So this combination is repeated, combination of these 2 columns. But if you select distinct, you can only see this once. So order by, as I mentioned before, if you want to just sort the result of your query, then you can order either ascending or descending. The default is ascending. Okay, if you don't specify anything, it just sorts for you in ascending order. And again filter the rows, so I already provided that. So here, for example, back to the staff table, we want to select only these two columns, department number and staff name, from the staff table, right? And we also want to order the result or sort the result by department number. Now, what is the default here? Default for sorting? Ascending order, right? Which means you have, for example, D15, then D20, then, for example, D38, and finally D42, right? This is the ascending order from the lowest number to the highest, to the largest number. And then if you have, for example, order by department number descending, you see the opposite order, right? Now this time it starts from the largest number to the smallest number. Now what if you want to like order by, for example, department number and staff? So because it didn't write anything, it means both department number and staff name should be sorted in ascending order because that's the default value, right? So we would expect the resulting table shows like, and because this comes first, so it's sorted by this first, but we have several like employees working in the same department, right? Now within each department, for example, within department D20, right? Now it sorts the staff name within this department also in ascending order. So for example, you will see James before O'Brien, before Pernell, and before Sanders. These are the people working in D20. Now, you can keep this same, only changing a staff name descending, right? Now, in this case, it still sorts the table department number in ascending order, right? So it is still order by department number because we didn't specify anything after department number, it needs ascending, right? So we still see D15, D20, D38, and so on. So from the smallest to the largest. But now, within each department, because we have several employees working in D20, now this time, what would be the order of sorting the staff name? Hello. Descending. Yeah? So this will be descending. So now this time we start from Sanders because S, right? S is after P. So because this is descending order, so it starts from the end to the beginning. So these are just more examples. So we will practice all this together. And these are some more examples. Just showing you the screenshots. So here, I order by location descending. So for example, I wanted to select distinct location and job. So because there are two columns coming with select distinct, so you want a combination being distinct, right? So you still see Washington repeated, right? But the combination of location and job should be distinct. So for example, we have only one Washington and clerk, one Washington and manager, and so on. So this is for the select distinct part, right? And we're selecting them from the staff and organization tables. So this is basically joining these tables. You don't have to worry about join yet, but this is one way of joining tables without explicitly mentioning join. Just using comma between the table names, adding the condition where you join the tables, that is using their common field or common attribute, which is here the department number. Most of the time that column is your foreign key, right? Because foreign key is the column that linking the two tables. And then order by location descending. So here, you would expect location, so you would expect your result in this order that are sorted by the location column in descending order, right? Because we mentioned order by location descending. So now we have Washington, and then Chicago, and Boston, and so on. Now the second example, using the same select distinct, so we still want select distinct location job from staff organization using the join. Now order by location and job descending. Now this time we want the job be in the descending order. So because we didn't mention anything for the location, what would be the default sorting for the location? Ascending, yeah? Ascending. So it means Atlanta comes before Boston. So this time we don't start with Washington, right? So it starts from Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, and so on. Now, what would be the order of the job within, for example, the same location. Now for Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, we don't have any problem, right? Because there is only one job there. But in Washington, we have 3. How do we know the result is Washington sales first, or for example, Washington manager first? Based on what is provided here, right? Because we mentioned job descending, it means within each location, now job is in descending order, which means sales come before manager and comes before clerk, right? Because S, like alphabetically, S is after N, right? So when we say descending order, it means that you have to start from the end. And these are just some more queries. We're going to practice this together. Okay, so I cover until group by. We do some practice, go back and do the group by. We also have predicates for verb conditions. For example, we can use arithmetic operations, comparison, Boolean, and so on. And these are some examples. These are like and in, for example, operators example. For example, you are searching for names where they start with specific, for example, character, right? But you don't mind what comes after. So in that case, you can use percentage. What are the, for example, sample results for these? If you have, for example, name like W percentage. Does, for example, we know qualifies for that? Yes, right? Because it starts with W. And then we have, for example, if you want the middle characters be something, for example, let's would, then you can specify percentage before and after. It means it can start with anything, end with anything, but you should have put in between. For example, you can have reboot, right? Or anything like that. And if you are, for example, want to see if, for example, department number is in, for example, these numbers. For example, you want to see whether your department number, if you have this condition, that your department number should be one of these. This is how you can search department number in either D20, D38, or D40. So this is used for comparison of the value with a set of values, right? These are some more examples using, for example, between and. So these are like the Boolean operators. And we use null or not null. For example, where years not null. Or for example, you can convert a date, right? And only extract the year part. For example, if you have employee date or anything like that, which is a date, right? Then if you use year, it only extracts the year part of the date. Now let's go to the VS Code. So we practice a little bit, and then we go to group by. So we should already have these two tables, organization and staff, right? You see here. Let me see. So if you want to like just, if I just write select, for example, if I write select star, as I mentioned before, it select all the columns, right? For example, select star from staff, because now I want to see, does it matter if they are uppercase or lowercase? Like select from my clauses, I mean. No, doesn't matter, right? In SQL Server, it doesn't matter. So now this will give you whatever is in the staff table, and this gives you whatever is in the organization table, right? Now, if you run this, invalid name staff, what was the name here? maybe the table name is no, it doesn't recognize this. Why? I'm not connected. Why? Okay, and then sometimes this happens. Let me disconnect and connect again. But this shouldn't be case sensitive. In the meanwhile, you can create these two tables and you can find them here, right? Let me show you where you can find them until it is loading the tables. So here, so if you go to here, right? Create user, staff, organization, and staff. So it shows you the comments for creating and inserting data into these tables. Like this is the file. Everything is very slow in this computer today. Right, so please copy and paste these, create the tables here, and insert data so we can practice together. Otherwise, but if you do like these queries with me, you don't get anything, right? You have to first create these tables. What else do we have here? Okay, and this is another example for the student and course. But right now, we're focusing on this one because our slides also cover this, but you also have the SQL statements to create and insert into the student and course tables. So let's check this if it is resolved now. Why? It just takes some time to load the tables here. Are you creating your table? Okay. I don't hear anything. I don't hear your keywords.
I wouldn't take what? How? It doesn't work when you do it. Okay, I'm supposed to okay. I can change it to the person.
No. Stop. Okay. Now, so this is our staff table, right? And this is, let's also see the organization. Right. And as you see, it doesn't matter, like it's not case sensitive, right? And so what if I want to select specific columns? Like for example, if I want to select only staff name and let's say department number, and also salary, right? I want to see these three right now. Let's keep this. Okay, now. This is what you see. So only specific columns, right? Now, what if I want to do this? Let's use select distinct department number from staff, right? Then this shows you the distinct values of department number, right? Whereas if you just type, if you don't use distinct and you only use department number, right? This shows you all the departments. So that is when you use distinct. Now, if you want to this is like, for example, if you want to see how many different departments you have in each table. So you use count, right? We talk about aggregate functions later, but these are just to give you some examples. Or let's see what example we had also some examples with the order by, right? So let's say you want to like select the specific columns. Let's go here to have the same examples. Order by. Okay. So let's say I'm selecting. Sorry? Because I have not created I have not written the table name completely, so it doesn't recognize the column. But if I type here the staff, right? If you type the table name first, now when you are, for example, want to write the column names, it brings the columns for you. Was that your question?
Yeah, I was thinking how to generate the table.
Yeah, it generated from like this from plus here. So when I already mentioned that I'm selecting some columns from the staff table, then here when I'm selecting these columns, it automatically brings this. But if I don't have this, if you only start from select like this, you see this curly line, it doesn't recognize the column trunk. So from staff, so it's good always to have like from table so that it shows you, like if you, for example, have a title, column names, or something, right? So, for example, department number and the staff name, right? From the staff table. So, I want to see only these two columns, department number and staff name. And then I want to sort the result by, let's say, order by department number. In, for example, let's say, don't mention anything. Then what do you expect the result to look like if I just order by department number and select these two columns? So let's see. So you get these two columns because we only selected these two columns, right? And then order by department number in ascending order, which means it starts from B15 to TP42, right? Because 15 comes before 42, so that is the ascending order. If you do descending, so if I write the exact same thing in descending order, right? Then you will see this, right? So you see the difference. This one, this is the ascending sort. This is the descending sort of the department number. This one starts from B42. And so let's also use order by with more than one column. Okay. Now, if you do this, I'm removing this to avoid confusion. Now, you would expect the result to be sorted by these two columns, but first department number, right? So it stored department number in ascending order, which it did. But now because we have several employees working in the same department, we want to see, for example, if we have to see D20 James first or see D20 Sanders first, right? This is what ascending descending here does. So if I type the same thing, and I only add, let's say, descending here, right? If I only add descending here, now you can compare the results. So in this case, it is still sorted departments in ascending order, right? Because we didn't mention anything here. Or you can just type ascending, ASC, right? But then within D20, instead of starting from D20 James, it started from D20 Sanders. Easy, right? Sleepy? Yeah. Okay, if you practice with me, you will wake up. Then, what if I add descending here? What do you expect? The department number should start from D42, right? So let's see. You see here, now we have it is first sorted by department number in descending order. Then within each department, for example, within department D38, we have 2 employees, right? So now it also sorts the staff name in descending order. If you don't specify anything here, then you will see the difference again. So you see this will change, so the order of the employees. Now let's go back to this slide. See what I don't miss anything here. This is order by I covered. Order by. Okay, let's also do select this thing with order by together. So let's use select. I want to show you first what are inside both tables. Now, yeah, thank you. Okay, so these are the 2 tables, right? Now, if I want to select, let's say, location, right? Which is in the department table, right? If I want to select location and job, right? Then I need this data from both tables. So, for example, let's say we always select, and then we specify column names, and then we write, for example, from which table. So, because the columns that we are selecting are in 2 different tables, that's why we need to use join, right? But we don't have to worry about join now. This is just an example. We'll cover it next session. So, for example, I'm selecting from staff and organization, so from both tables. It doesn't matter if it is uppercase, lowercase, right? And then we have, for example, let's say I want to have location and job. Okay? Select location and job. So when when you are selecting from 2 or more tables, if for example you have a column that have the same name in both tables, for example department number, right? Department number exists in both tables with the same name. Then you have to specify which table you are selecting this from, right? Then you have to mention, for example, department dot department number, or staff dot department number, which means this department number comes from which table. Now let's select this thing to get the distinct values. Okay. Location and job. from staff and organization, and then there's order by location. Order by location. So what is the common, this is just a practice for the next week. What is the common field between these two tables? So let's say if you want to join these two tables, which column should you use?
Department number.
Department number. So this is the first candidate for joining these two tables because it's a foreign key, right? Do we always have to use foreign keys to link tables together? Most of the time. You may have some other common fields that you can use for joining two tables. Can you give me another way to join these two tables? So, staff ID is the same as manager ID, right? So manager ID is basically the same as a staff ID. It's just these like our staff can have different roles. They could be managers, etc. And this one, because this is the department or organization table, we want to see who is the manager of each department. But this ID, and this is not the good column name for this table. If you have not created your table first, you can use manager ID instead of just manager, right? So these two are the same. So this is another way to join these two tables, which give you this different result from the join that we are using, for example, based on department number. But I just said this to let you know that varieties are not the only way to link the tables. So where staff department number is equal to organization department number, right? So this is how we join the tables. Now, if I run this, what do you expect to see? So the column that you would expect to see is location and job, right? So you would expect to see, for example, New York, Boston, Washington, etc. And then in each location, you will also see, for example, the job, manager, sales, etc. But we want to see the distinct location and job. So if I run this, so let's remove this. So I can use this. Okay. Now you see the location and job, right? And you also see that we ordered by location in ascending order because we didn't specify anything. So by ascending means we have Atlanta before Boston, before Chicago, and then before Washington, right? And why do I have Washington repeated? We have select state. Because it's a combination of location and job, right? So when we do select this thing, for example, multiple columns, so it checks that the combination of the columns are distinct, right? For example, we only have one Washington and Clark. And let's do some more examples here. And let's do the same, just change it. Location and job. Let's we have the example is like the job setting. And let's see what is the difference. So now you would expect in your result, when you sort the result by location in ascending order, which is this, so this column should remain the same, right? But here, you should see the job in descending order, which means sales should come before manager and then clerk, right? So if I run this, you see now in Washington sales come first. Here we have Washington clerk, here we have Washington sales, Washington manager, and Washington clerk later. If I have, for example, descending here and descending here, then you can see the result, right? So now this start location in descending order, sort the location by descending order, and then within each location, it also sorts the job in descending order. Easy, right? So let's just skip these parts that are very easy. Now, just one more thing, because I also mentioned this in the slide. What if you want to select, for example, the highest 3 salaries in your staff table. You can use select. In SQL Server, you use top followed by the number, right? For example, if you want to get highest 3, then you get top 3, right? Staff name, salary, right? And then also okay, so I sort by salary because we want to get like the highest 3 salaries, right? So if you only have, let's say before this, I write select staff name and salary from staff order by salary. If you don't use top 3, okay? So if I run this, now the first query gives you these 2 columns, right? And only sort the salary in ascending order, right? And so what if you want to get from the highest salary to the lowest salary? Then you descend, right? Then you descend here. Unless they descending here. So this is the result of the first query. So you get like the list of employees from the highest salary to the lowest salary. Now, if you want to only select the top 3, top 5, top 10 employees with the highest salary, you can use select top that number, right? And then the rest is the same. So this is an SQL Server. If you are using MySQL, SQLite, you can use limit, okay? So you can have the same thing and then add limit. So in SQL Server, I will get an error if I write this, and I will show you that. But if you are using MySQL, you should be fine. So instead of top 3, you can just type limit 3. But this is not defined here, right? You can use it in MySQL and SQLite, I guess. So these are the small differences that I mentioned before. Although I gave you options to use any like DBMS or yeah.
Oh, I have a question about top. So, like, how do you know what columns to plan? For example, things the first numeric column, or like if I have 2 numeric columns, and what I'm selecting. Like, how do I know what top?
How do you know? Sorry.
So, like, how do I know what top is assigned to? It's just assigned to salary, or salary. Say I have some other numeric column that I'm selecting. How do I say select this specific numeric column that I want to be the top?
For example, what column?
I don't know.
Numeric column?
Yeah, that has numbers. So how do you know what topic to apply to this?
Like any column. For example, let's say you have instead of salary here, you have commission, right? And it is numeric, right? And then your question is how can you use top with the commission? Let's say finding the employees with the highest commission. Then instead of salary, you type order by commission, right? Then in that case, it sorts the result by commission. And then if you want to like get the top 3, top 5, you use also top 3.
So the top, okay, so the top is the order or
Yeah, the reason I wrote these like together was for you to understand what top 3 is using here, is doing here, right? Because the first one only like selecting these 2 columns and sort the result by salary, right? Because we use order by salary in descending order. So this is basically giving us all the employees with their salaries listed or sorted in descending order from the highest to the lowest. Now, what if you have a table with millions of rows and you don't want to like get all those rows? You only want to see what are top 10 employees, right? With the highest salary. And this is how you use that. What if you want to get like the top 10 lowest salaries or top 3 lowest salaries? Right, then you don't use descending, right? Then you don't use descending. Then it sorts the salary, sorts the table by salary in ascending order. That is from the lowest to highest. So from this query, you would expect this table, but in the opposite order of salary, right? Okay. So this one gives you the salary in ascending order, which is from the lowest to the highest. And now if you want to get, for example, the lowest 3 salaries, then you get select top 3. I think it should be like so this was the okay, now it works, right? So you can see also both together. So you like ascending, using ascending or descending order is just for you to see the sorting results in a specific order, right? And then top 3 is exactly the same as what init is doing in MySQL, right? You only defining, for example, I want the first 3 rows, I want the first 5 rows, and that's it. Now let's quickly go to group by. I will not have time to practice group by, but just at least cover it. So, as I mentioned before, sometimes you want to like group the rows of data based on some sharing the same value. For example, you have department IDs, you have salaries in the staff and employee table, and you want to find average salary in each department. Or maybe you want to find the number of employees working in each department, right? If you want to find, for example, number of employees in each department, average salary, or something like that, using aggregated functions for each of like these values, then you can use group by. Now, these are the aggregate functions for group by that you have to know. Count, sum, average, min, max. Okay. So, for example, you want to find number of employees, average, and minimum salary for each department. Right. Now, first, when you see a query like this, you have to see which column you have to select from, which table you have those columns, right? So number of employees means count of employees, which is basically the staff table or employee table, right? Average and minimum salary is also in the staff table, right? Because the salary column is in the staff table. So if I show you this, the salary column is in the staff, right? So whatever we want are in the staff table, right? This is the staff table. So we have salary and we have also employees here. So count of employees or count star here give you the number of employees, right? If you, for example, select count star from staff, this will give you the number of employees, right? Because we're counting everything in the staff table, counting all rows. I mean, the staff table give you the staff, the count of the staff. Now, you also want average and minimum salary. Easy, you just use these aggregate functions, average salary, minimum salary, etc. But you have to note that we want them for each department, and we are in the staff table. In the staff table, each employee can work in, in each department we have several employees working in that department, right? So we want to see something like this, right? Department 1, what is count of employees, what is the average salary, what is the minimum salary. Department 2, what is that? So this is how we group the data. That is why you group by department number, right? So this is the column that we are using for group by. One important thing here is that your select part, whenever you are using group by, your select is limited to only the column that you are using, columns that you are using for aggregation, plus aggregated functions. What do I mean? For example, here what was the column that you used in group by? Department ID or department number, right? We group by department number. So you see here, we group by department number because we want the number of employees, we want average salary, and we want minimum salary for each department, right? So we group by department ID or department number in the slides. Now, when you have this, your select part can be limited, like you can only use either department number because this is used for grouping, and all the other columns as long as they are used with aggregate functions. For example, can I write select staff name, department number, account star, etc.? No. Can I write select department number, average salary, salary? Can I write also salary? No. Because which salary? So the result is average salary for each department. If in your select part you write select department number, salary from staff group by department number, right? Now for department 1 we have 3 salaries. Which salary? Right? So that is why you will get an error. You will get an error because it only works with aggregate functions because it has to know which salary, average, minimum, maximum, etc. So this is important, and then this is just the same thing with same actually query. We practice that later. Now, let's say we want to find how many different jobs exist in the company. Now, how many different jobs? So if you remember the staff table, we had a column job, right? Where we had, for example, manager, clerk, and so on. So that was our staff table. Now, this is the staff table. So how many distinct jobs exist in the company? So we have manager, we have sales, we have clerk. So you would expect 3 jobs, right? How do you write this query? So you want to find the count of different jobs, right, or distinct jobs. So you want to select count in distinct job from staff, right? And this is how you write this. So I will write distinct job from staff. Now, as you see, we'll get 3, right? So this is the distinct job from staff. Now, the next query, we want to see whose salary is above company's average. So, which table contains salary information? Staff, right? So, if you want to see whose salary is above company's average, first of all, you have to calculate the average salary, right? Because you want to compare the salaries with this. So, if you want to write this, you want to try this. First, write the nested query, which is the average salary. So, we want to see whose salary is above company's average. How can I find company's average salary? You already know the aggregated functions. We want to find average salary. Average salary is just average salary, right? Aggregate function average salary from staff, right? Because the salary column is in the staff table. Now, this will give us average salary here, right? So if I write this, it gives us average salary, which is this one, right? Now, so how can I find whose salary is greater than this amount? So if you want to find those employees, so I want to select, let's say, staff name, right? Because in my result, I want to see the staff name and its salary, right? The staff name and salary. The staff name and salary from which table? From staff, right? Now, what is the condition? Condition is, which clause do you use for conditions? Where clause, right? So you write where, right? Now, where salary, right, is greater than company's average salary. Now, company's average salary. Now, what is company's average salary? You want to find the staff, right, or employees whose salary is greater than this amount. Now, what is this amount? Company's average salary is here, right? You just have this here. Now, this is a nested. And this will give us a table with 2 columns, staff name and salary, but only showing those staff that their salary is greater than company's average. Now, you also saw the company's average salary, which was 18,000 something, right? So in my result, you would expect to only see the employees with salaries higher than 18,000 something, right? So if I run this, you will see like these 3 employees, salaries are 20,000, 23,000, so not greater than 18. And that's it for today. And next week, please, if you have not done already, create these tables, practice, so that we can put this together.
My table is funny. I also like. Did you get that one? Okay.
I can.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought I